In a competition to determine which movie takes the prize for being the most hated, discussed, and controversial of the year of our Lord 2025, the modern Disney Snow White remake hardly has any competitors. After the days of its release, it's become a hot topic of discussion around the internet. It has its many detractors, some staunch few defenders. It's been talked about, dumped on, and memed to oblivion. It's gotten so crazy that beyond the typical attention a movie like this would receive in the online sphere, the controversy surrounding it has even garnered a reaction from more mainstream media outlets. And all of this really comes as no surprise. I mean, consider the build-up to its release and how that went. Every tidbit, set photo, trailer, and crumb of information that came out about this movie for years prior has been the catalyst for a slurry of reactions. So this blowout coming as a result of its release should surprise really no one. Currently, the movie sits as a sure box office bomb, and all of its detractors are celebrating its anticipated demise. Indeed, this movie's failure seemed like it was predestined, and me, being affected by the discourse surrounding it, got to thinking, why and what led to this? What are the reasons that contributed to this movie's controversial reception, the annoyance it provoked in a lot of people, and really to its eventual failure? The conclusions I reached are, I think, somewhat insightful, not just to the situation concerning the remake itself, but really to a generally flawed approach applied by modern movie executives to making movies as a whole. So, I decided to add to the general noise surrounding the Snow White remake by sharing these deliberations. Without further delay, here are 3 reasons why, at least to my mind, the Snow White remake simply doesn't make sense. Reason number 1. Cultural appropriation is okay when done to white culture, and authenticity only matters when it's non-white culture. The original Snow White is a German fairy tale from the 19th century. German. European. Its cultural origins are European, in essence, white. It's part of that part of the world's folklore, heritage, and history. And there is nothing wrong with that. The planet Earth is a gigantic place and is home to many different people, each with their own distinct history, culture, and identity. And I am in full agreement that this diversity should be celebrated. And indeed, the current day pop culture climate is full of people who place great emphasis on the importance of authenticity. Cultural appropriation, i.e., whitewashing other people's culture, is seen as a cardinal sin, an extension of racism, colonialism, oppression, and bigotry. Authenticity to the original source material as it concerns the history and cultural identity of said source material seems to be, at least on the face of it, quite important to a large and very vocal crowd of people. And then you cast a Latina actress to play the lead in a story based on a German fairy tale. And you go one step further, immediately labeling all people who find this off-putting and are not okay with it racists for feeling that way. It seems that the crowd of people who will champion and fight against cultural appropriation are conveniently oblivious to the fact that they have indeed fallen victim to a standard they created. Imagine the uproar if Disney had cast white actors to play in the Aladdin remake, considering it's a movie set in the Middle East. Imagine the reaction from these very same people if the Mulan remake had not boasted a full Chinese cast. And for the most part, I would have agreed. I want a movie set in the Middle East to be Middle Eastern, a movie set in China to be Chinese, and a movie set in Africa to be African, especially if you're taking inspiration from history and culture. But in that same vein, I want a movie set in Europe to feel, well, European. Call me crazy. And yet, for some reason, the same people who seemingly care about authenticity will immediately go against the very same principles they claim they have when it's applied to white culture or history. And that double standard pisses people off. Hypocrites are generally not loved by anyone, and when you see hypocrisy on screen, it immediately annoys and pisses people off. And that's exactly what happens when it comes to the casting of Snow White. This is the essence of the dissatisfaction that people felt and the reason why so many reacted the way they did to the Rachel Zegler casting. They wanted their Snow White to be, well, white, just like the source material has her being. No one was annoyed that Aladdin was from a Middle Eastern descent or that Mulan cast a Chinese actress, because it made sense. I think that most people are perfectly fine with respecting other people's cultures as long as they receive the same level of respect in return. Most people are not okay with the reverse whitewashing in movie casting of characters, and if we were to apply an equal standard of respecting authenticity and avoiding cultural appropriation, that should not be a controversial position to take. Sure, maybe some of Snow White's detractors are legitimate racists, but I find it hard to believe that the millions of people who rejected the movie all are. And if you believe that cultural appropriation is okay as long as you do it to white people just because they're white, well, I got some news for you. You're just a different kind of racist yourself. Reason number 2. You're selling nostalgia, but changing the original. If, in response to my previous point, you say, but this is not a remake that's intended to be true to the original fairy tale, it's a remake of the Disney movie that adapted the fairy tale, a work of fiction with its own creative and artistic vision, therefore it's okay to take liberties, well, I have a counterpoint to that line of reasoning as well. The fact that you're relying on the nostalgia for the original animated Snow White to sell this movie and to put butts in the movie theater means you need to be more concerned with being faithful to the original, not the opposite. Because in essence, you are trying to build off, take advantage, and rely on people's love and fond memories of the original animated movie. People love that movie and remember it fondly for what it is. They remember Snow White, the evil queen, the dwarves, the prince, all of it fondly. Nostalgia is literally your main selling point for this remake. So why then are you going out of your way to make changes that no one asked for and ones that fly in the face of the original? You are literally breaking the illusion of nostalgia and thus going against the main thing you are relying on to attract people to this movie. Now, I haven't seen the movie and I have no intention to do so, but beyond Zegler's casting, what I'm hearing is that they made changes to the plot, excluded the prince, added weird side characters, tried to insert some weird girl power moments, and overall just went out of their way to subvert what people would expect from a remake of the original animated film. But yet, the movie producers are still trying to sell the movie by referring back to the original. Like, for example, they kept Snow White's outfit exactly the same. The dwarves are the same characters, pretty much. You still have Sneezy, Grumpy, and the rest of them just like the original. And I am just confused at this weird approach. It's simple, man. If you're going to sell this by hearkening back to the original, keep this remake accurate and faithful. Or if you want to take this thing into an entirely new direction, reinvent it and sell it as a remake that's doing its own thing, go ham with any changes you want to make and give it its own identity. But don't try to scam me by pulling me in using the name recognition and beloved memory of the original only to then pull the rug under me by giving me something that takes the original and changes it into something else. Don't sell a remake with nostalgia if you want to take this new remake into a different direction. That's just false advertising. And that is sure to piss people off, especially fans of the original, pulled in expecting something harkening back to it. And piss people off, it sure did. Reason number 3. Lack of authenticity and creative vision, aka how to do diversity right. Here we have to ask, and attempt to answer, a more fundamental question. Why did people behind this movie even attempt to pull off this ass-backwards attempt to both remake the original but change it at the same time? Well, the answer is quite simple. Using the original is easy. Using established name recognition of something already known and loved is easy marketing. Executives are banking on sure box office returns because they are leaning on something that's already been tried and tested. Instead of taking a risk with something new, let's just use the tested commodity and make money off the back of the creativity and success of people that came before, those that made the original. But then, let's make changes so that we can pander to the woke crowd and satisfy modern politically driven prerogatives that define movie making in the present day. And this lazy approach to movie making is what leads me to my third and final point. See, you can't have it both ways, and the failure of Snow White proves it. You can't have something that both is faithful enough to the original work and different enough so that it fulfills the modern day criteria of championing diversity and inclusivity. You won't be able to satisfy people on both sides of the aisle. You are going to alienate people regardless. Those that are fans of the original will always want something like it. And those that want something radically different to the outdated cultural sensibilities of the original as they perceive them, to them you would not have gone far enough in your reconstruction to make them happy. Old Bulgarian saying goes, "He who tries to sit between two chairs falls in the middle." And by trying to have it both ways, you inevitably get a failure like Snow White on your hands. See, a fundamental problem is this lack of bravery that I alluded to at the beginning of this section. It's easy and safe to try to do a remake of a beloved classic and try to sell it. But to do representation right, to not piss people off, you need to go in a completely different and more radical direction. You need to do something entirely new. Those old movies are beloved because they are the manifestation of genuine creative vision. They're the result of the efforts of people with artistic integrity that wanted to tell a certain story. You can't take this story afterwards, butcher it, and try to attach modern sensibilities to it by shoehorning some sort of message. The original story wasn't told with this message in mind. The two simply won't gel. You are trying to mix oil and water. In the end, you get something that simply doesn't work as a story. At best, it's something half-assed and cliché. What you need to do is find people who have a story to tell, a story which is characterized by these modern sensibilities, and give them the freedom to risk failure to tell that story. Instead of taking a beloved animated classic and trying to repurpose it while taking advantage of its name recognition and marketability, how about you try to make a new movie with its own vision and own unique story? There is nothing wrong with the representation of Latin American people. I'm sure that there is plenty to draw from the history and folklore of that part of the world that could lend itself to a new, interesting movie. In fact, the actual culture of that part of the world has, for the most part, not been explored in any depth by Hollywood. I can count on one hand the number of movies that actually explore Mesoamerican culture and history. There's Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, The Road to El Dorado by DreamWorks, and Namor in Wakanda Forever, and that's about it. I'm sure they have plenty of fairy tales that can be used as inspiration to make a new modern classic in the spirit of the old Snow White. Same can be said for African, Indian, Native American, Japanese, Korean, or any other culture out there. You can have your own ethnically diverse cast that actually fits the story and no one would care. People would welcome it even. Having your own artistic vision on a story would allow you to tell a tale of female empowerment if you want to. Something that the original Snow White simply isn't about, and there is nothing wrong with that. Don't try to shoehorn something like that in a previously existing story. Tell a new story that has that as its inspiration. And what's even worse is that precedent supports this. Look at how beloved Aladdin or Mulan are. Look at how successful Frozen and Moana were. Where was the controversy, the anger, when those movies were coming out? On the flip side, the Snow White remake, with its attempt to exploit nostalgia but also offer modern cultural sensibilities, was lambasted precisely because that simply doesn't work, and it was lambasted deservedly so. And the box office numbers reflect that. Stop being lazy, Hollywood. Tell some new stories, take risk, and do diversity the right way. And if you're going to sell us nostalgia, have the respect for us as an audience to give us something that is faithful to the original and the source material that inspired it. Conclusion. In short, these are my reasons as to why the Snow White remake caused so much controversy and ultimately ended up being a failure. It harkens back to a combination of hypocrisy and lazy filmmaking that led to this film's abysmal reception and performance. But, taking into consideration the takeaways from my analysis, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are lessons to be learned here. A savvy executive can use this as a learning experience, and that just might lead to better adaptations and better movies overall in the long run. At least I hope so. Otherwise, all the noise and pushback would have been for nothing. I mean, putting your trust in Hollywood executives to do the right thing is always a safe bet. Right? Right?